you actually do these things that I'm about to tell you, you will finish your book by the end of the year. I've done it. I've done it 6 times. Hi friends, my name is Elizabeth, and today I'm going to tell you how you can actually write your book in 2024. So let's say you want to write a book. Maybe you've always had the idea lurking in the back of your mind, but you've always been like, someday I'll do that. Well, my friend, someday is here, and I am going to tell you how you can actually write your book this year. And this is how. Are you ready? Tip number 1. Stop saying that you're writing a book and start saying that you're writing a first draft. All books start with a first draft, and if you are unable to finish a first draft, then you will never finish a book. That's just true. Now, this may seem small and semantics to you, but I have seen so many writers get so caught up in the idea of writing a book, a grand, perfect, sellable book, that they put so much pressure on themselves every time they sit down to write the first draft, and every time their writing does not turn out as perfect on the paper as it did in their head, and they get more and more overwhelmed and frustrated and beat down until they just give up on writing altogether. It happens again and again. You just start putting off finishing your magical perfect book until some point in the future when it will just somehow be easier. That day will never come. You can literally erase this whole problem if you just stop telling yourself that you're writing a book and start telling yourself that you're writing a first draft. Because a first draft can be terrible, like laughably bad. And then when you sit down to write and everything you write sounds like a monkey wrote it, you can just have a good chuckle about the absurdity of first drafts and then move on, knowing that books actually get written in revision. And you'll never get to revision if you never finish the first draft. Tip number 2. If you find yourself dreading your writing time or stalling every day until it's too late to write, then simply lower your goal. I mean, just do it. Just lower your daily goal until it isn't so overwhelming anymore. You'll find that starting is the hardest part. Every day, it never gets easier. Starting to write is always the hardest part, just sitting down and doing it. If you spend all day fretting about the 1,000 words that you still have to write, and then never actually sit down to write, then you will never write. But if you set a goal of 100 words per day, and don't spend the whole day fretting about it, because 100 words is just a few sentences that can be written in under 10 minutes, then you'll quickly find that you end up writing more than 100 words every day. And every extra word is just a bonus to boost your self-confidence. And worst case scenario, at the end of every month, you'll be 3,000 words further in your book. And if you had set your goal at 1,000 words a day, it is likely that you wouldn't even reach 3,000 words. I mean, you can just get overwhelmed with the goal numbers. Don't do that to yourself. Just set small goals and resist the urge to constantly make them higher. You know, you want to be real settled into a goal before you decide to make it higher. Okay, I'm just telling you. Tip number 3. Learn to recognize what slows you down and then plan on saving that part until the second draft. Skip the hard stuff. You're still writing a book. For example, in my first draft, I literally never write connective scenes. I just write the main body, meaty scenes of the story. The connective tissue, I don't worry about it in the first draft. I literally never have. I worry about connecting my story scenes in draft 2. If you know, or if you start to realize that there is some aspect of storytelling that always slows you down, or sidetracks you, or intimidates you, just skip it. Just plan on skipping it and saving it for the first draft. That way, every time you come to that aspect, you can be like, I'm not worried about this now. I'm doing that later. And then you can just keep on writing your first draft. You'll have so much more confidence during the second draft than you do right now because you'll have a whole book in front of you that you wrote. So any aspect of storytelling, description, dialogue, connective scenes, time passing, anything, just anything. Anything that always consistently slows you down, skip it. For the first draft, just skip it. You can add it later. You can always add it. And if you go into your first draft planning on always skipping it, then it never has a chance to slow you down. Tip number 4. Set small, frequent goals. I guess this tip should have come before step 2, but you know, here we are. So when I'm drafting a novel, I have a 3-tier system of goals. The first tier is my ideal writing day, where I plan, I hope, I dream of writing 3 times per day, each time writing 500 words, ending the day with 1,500 words. You know, a morning writing time, an afternoon writing time, and an evening writing time. My second tier of writing goals, when the first tier is too much, is to have 2 writing sessions per day, each time writing 300 words. So a morning writing session and an evening writing session. trying to get 300 words each time. And if the words just aren't coming and that's still not working, then my lowest tier, my rock bottom goal during drafting is not 0 words per day, it is to have 2 writing sessions per day, each time writing 100 words. That's literally 200 words per day, a paragraph. But if I can do that, then it usually only takes me a few days to work through whatever in the story is slowing me down until I naturally reach a point in the story where I start feeling more confident in my writing. And then I can go back to writing 300 or 500 words every writing session that I have. It just kind of naturally happens. If you make your goal be 100 words, eventually you're going to start just naturally writing over 100 words. Because 100 words, I mean, that's a little amount of words. So rather than having a big goal of like 1,000 words a day that you either hit or you don't, I give myself a tiered goal system so that I'm always making progress. I'm always hitting my goals and staying motivated. Because my goals are small, I allow myself to give myself small goals. I'm just always getting words on the page. If your goal is always a flat 1,000 words per day, then as soon as you don't hit it, you'll be disappointed. And then some days you'll be so busy and tired that you don't write at all, and then you'll tell yourself, well, it's unrealistic to write 1,000 words every day. I'll make up for it later when I have more time. And then you never write a book. Small goals. Small goals are your friend. Tip number 5, reevaluate your process every week. This sounds very micromanagey, type A prison warden behavior, but it actually isn't at all. I am the type of person where as soon as I start feeling stressed about meeting my goals, I decide it's better to just give up on my goals altogether. Because that way, at least, I won't be able to fail. That is not healthy. I know this. It's also not productive. But I have found that if I set myself up with reasonable expectations for every day, for example, 100 words per day, and then check in at the start of every week, every Sunday, to see if those goals continue to be reasonable, then I have a way easier time of maintaining a schedule and always be moving towards my goals. If I don't check in at frequent expected intervals, then my goals can just quickly turn into me every day saying, well, I didn't write 100 words per day, but I'll do it tomorrow. I'll do it this weekend. I'll do it next week. And then the next thing you know, it's 6 months later and you have not written at all. If I'm not checking on myself consistently and frequently, tomorrow becomes weeks or months of not writing at all. So reevaluate your process at the start of every week. And by that, I literally just mean every Sunday, ask yourself, was I writing 100 words per day this week? If that was your goal, or whatever your goal was. And if yes, then great, keep going. If no, why not? Is the goal too big? Are you overwhelmed? Can you imagine a smaller goal that will be easier to hit? Set that smaller goal for just 1 week. You might start thinking, if I set too small a goals, then this book is going to take forever. But you're not thinking about forever for the rest of the book. You're just thinking about 1 week. So if you're like, this week I had a hard time hitting my goal of 500 words per day. Next week, I'm going to try to get 200 words per day and see how that goes. And then 1 week later, you reevaluate. And you might be like, oh, 200 words a day was easy peasy. Next week, I'm going to try to hit 400 words per day. You know, just the small time of 1 week. Not the rest of the draft, not forever and ever of your writing life. 1 week, and then you'll reevaluate again. Making your goals smaller can feel like a failure, but it's not at all. Hitting any goal is better than staying stagnant for weeks or months on end. Tip number 6, practice getting creative on demand. This may take some experimentation, but after a while you'll find that certain songs or Pinterest boards or writing craft videos will automatically spark your creativity without you having to really work at it at all. Maybe you take morning walks or practice stretching or reading similar books to the one that you're writing or reading old favorite books or reading poetry or reading film criticism. There's just going to be certain activities that you find as a writer that make you want to be creative and that really push you and motivate you to sit down and work on your own book. Like you've tapped into some art feeling and you're like, oh, I want to put this art feeling in my book. I want to give this art feeling to somebody else through my book. Find whatever activity that is for you and use it. Tip number 7, have a low pressure side project. Something creative that you can work on when your novel just isn't happening for whatever reason. That way you can continue writing creatively without forcing yourself to write words in your book that you just hate. Hating everything that you write will just make you dread writing, and then eventually you'll stop writing altogether. So, a way that I like to avoid this happening to my creativity is to switch from writing my novel to writing poetry every time I get stuck. You could also switch to a short story or a fun essay about some obscure topic, maybe a topic that you researched for your novel, or some personal project or novel that you have no intention of publishing, that you're just writing for the fun of it. Just anything that gets you away from your troublesome book without totally taking you away from writing. And make sure it's low pressure. Low pressure. I literally almost never start writing a poem with the intention of ever having anyone reading it or even submitting it for any sort of publication at all. I'm just writing it for me, just for the love of writing a short poem that I can be dedicated to for a few days and then just move on. A few days type of project can be like a refreshing, clean energy for your brain when you're working on a novel, which is a few years type of project. You know, just have fun. Have fun writing, and then you can get back to your novel feeling refreshed. Tip number 8. Your mind is truly your worst enemy, especially when you are writing a book. So you need to actively remind yourself that rebuilding creativity is part of the process. It's something you have to do when you're writing a book. So when you're researching for your book, allow yourself to be fully immersed in the researching. Don't think about it as if you're wasting time not writing your book. When you're reading something, be fully immersed in that writer's story. When you switch to your small, low-pressure project, put your whole heart into it. Forget your novel while you're doing that activity so that you can actually become refreshed. If your novel is always eating at the back of your mind while you're trying to do something to rebuild your creativity, you will never rebuild your creativity. If you are able to maintain this mentality of being fully immersed in whatever creative aspect of creativity building you are in, then your times of struggling through the rough parts of your book won't last nearly as long as they would if you were constantly beating yourself up for not making progress while you read a book or write a poem, or for stressing about how much is left to do in the book. Writing is like cooking. You can tell when it's been made with love. Tip number 9. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Skip any part that gets you stuck. If you get stuck in a scene, skip it. If you get stuck in a chapter, skip to the next chapter. Getting stuck in a story is often an indicator that your story has taken a wrong turn. And rather than powering through, I like to skip ahead to the next scene that I know will be in the novel. This is not like the prepared skipping from the last tip, a few tips ago, where I'm like, I'm never going to even try to write connective tissue in my first draft. This is not that. This is where you're writing a scene that you plan on writing for your book, and it's just not working. Instead of just every day sitting down and being like, oh, I hate this scene, just skip it. Just skip it. Skip to the next scene that you know will be in the book, that you want to write to be in the book. Skip it. If you try to power through scenes that are giving you trouble, you can end up writing a lot more stuff that will end up getting cut, and it will be way harder to figure out where you went wrong and how far back you need to go before the story can get itself back on track. Whereas if you just skip the scene that's troubling you and go to the next scene that you know you want to be in that book, the next scene might come very easily to you, and then you can realize that troublesome scene was just not right for this book. If you'd have powered through, you would have gotten way off track. Don't do that. Tip number 10. If you don't hit your goal one day, don't add that goal to the next day. If you make your goals cumulative, your writing will turn into nothing but a numbers game. You'll feel like you're doing your taxes whenever you're working on it, always worrying about making the numbers match. And if you get into some particularly rough space where you don't write for a week and you're just like, curled up in a bowl somewhere being sad and not writing, then the next time you have to write, your workload will be 7 times bigger than it should be. Just don't do that. Don't do that to yourself. Treat each day as its own thing. The day's goals do not bump into the next day's goals, whether your goals are time or word oriented. So no matter whether you reach your goal or not, the next day always reset to 0. That way you can make extra progress too. So like if your goal is 100 words per day and one day you write, 112 words per day, don't think, well, tomorrow I only have to write 88 words. Just don't do that. Every day reset to 0 and be like, today I will write 100 words every day. And then voila, a year later your book is done.